This is the Inside Data Centre podcast. We talk to the people who power the data centre sector to give you insider info on everything happening in DC today. Here's your host, Andy Davis.
Welcome to the Inside Data Centre podcast. Today I'm joined by Ash Gupta and Dave Misra from Galaxy Data Centres. Good morning, both.
Good morning, Andy.
Good to see you both again. I went for morning because I was trying to remember where in the world you were. So it's afternoon for me, but I'm pretty sure it's morning for you.
It's morning somewhere.
Exactly, it's always morning somewhere. Thanks for coming on. I'm looking forward to learning a bit more about both of you as well, and obviously your careers and how you ended up in this world of data centres, but also talking in a bit of detail about Galaxy Data Centres. I know you've got some exciting plans, a lot of good things happening, so we can share some of that with the audience. Before we go into it all, do you both want to just give a quick introduction of who you are and what your role is at Galaxy Data Centres? Dave, should we start with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I am one of the partners at Galaxy Data Centers. We founded, Galaxy in late 2018, 2019. So just a background, I started my career in the venture capital industry where I was investing on deep tech, AI, cybersecurity, IoT, clean tech. And I realized that one of the largest line item expenses across our portfolio companies was actually computing infrastructure, both cloud and co-location. And many of my portfolio companies began asking me to help them reduce their AWS bills, which got me deeply involved in the leasing side of the business, working as a tenant rep essentially for them to negotiate their cloud deals. Help several startups reduce their spend, but then I realized, okay, this infrastructure side of things is really, really interesting. And we decided to start Galaxy, with a thesis that even with the lower rates in data centers, there's still, a substantial markup in power. And we started Galaxy to kind of capitalize on our ability to secure energy, data center capacity, and pair tenants. And that's really how Galaxy got started.
Very interesting. And Ash, what about you?
Yeah. So again, I'm co-founder and managing partner at Galaxy. My background really comes from the energy industry, kind of coming in, used to trade virtual energy derivatives, invest in transmission and generation infrastructure. So really kind of coming in from that angle, helped advise a ton of data centers in the past, and figure out retail power contracts for a lot of facilities, and then made that transition over to being a data center and helping advise other operators and owners. And so, yeah, it was a pretty natural transition for me.
Yeah, it sounds like it. And I think one point I want to say as well, like you must have seen quite a lot of change and shifts in your period in the industry. Even from the 2018 to now, we've seen a massive shift. But throughout your career, I guess you both must have seen huge changes from the investment side, the capital required, but also the industry as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, when I started in kind of the power industry, one of the things that we used to see a lot of was our focus was primarily on industrials and manufacturing because they were the large power users, and that's shifted almost 180 to data centers, and the entire industry in kind of the energy sector that's really oriented itself now around serving not only retail and commercial loads, your typical office buildings and residential, but now really driving data centers as a core segment in their portfolio.
Yeah, and to add to that, right, like talking about shifts. So when we started, we kind of had a thesis that energy is going to be, the future of data centers. We also did some Bitcoin mining, and we realized that actually data centers of the future are going to look a lot more like mining facilities than traditional data centers. Other shifts, obviously 2020 and 2022 and before, AI was nowhere to be found. And, as you might have seen, Andy, technology is always changing, and if you're at the forefront of it, you have to challenge norms. For example, I recently read this quote from Jensen, where he was talking about it took almost 15 years for the traditional data center and cloud industry to reach $1 trillion, and AI, where it's going to take four. So it's just really interesting how fast this industry this is growing and how many shifts we're seeing. It seems like we're completely evolving, technologically leapfrogging where we are 4 years from now. So really excited what we're going to see here in the future.
Yeah, it's a crazy day. I think I commented on one of my posts yesterday. Nobody knows what's coming next, and whenever anyone ever tries to tell me the prediction in growth, I always say, I don't think anyone knows. If we knew, we'd be very rich, wouldn't we? We'd certainly put some money on it. And it brings us on to Galaxy. You mentioned there, you formed it 2018, 2019. But do you want to give a quick overview of Galaxy Data Centres, kind of what you're doing, what your plans are, and then we'll go into a bit more detail.
Yeah, so Galaxy advises, designs, and operates modern wholesale colocation and hyperscale data centers across North America, EMEA, and Southeast Asia. Our mission is really to deliver scalable, energy efficient data center solutions, and really to meet and exceed kind of the ever changing needs of the industry as a whole. And this facility that we acquired in London really is a step forward in meeting that vision. We've got 24 megawatts of utility capacity, and plans for developing kind of another 15 megawatts of critical IT in two new facilities. So yeah.
Yeah.
Exciting times. And Dave, anything to add on that?
Yeah, as an owner, developer, operator, we're focusing on the enterprise segment, the hyperscale segment, but really diving into the future, focusing on AI. But yeah, Galaxy's core focus is aligning energy, power, and customer demand, and building critical, infrastructure for the needs of tomorrow.
Yeah, and Ash, you mentioned the Redhill Data Centre, which I think was January, wasn't it? That was announced. Seems like only yesterday.
Yeah.
It's like seven months ago already. But do you want to tell the story about how that came about, and like you said, a bit more on your plans for that facility?
Yeah, so historically, Galaxy had been, really focused as an advisor for a lot of different facilities, a lot of different owners. And so Redhill Data Center kind of was an opportunity for us to really step into the ownership role, and operations role ourselves. And so that was, it just kind of naturally came together. And, we've been hard at work trying to kind of put our flag down and kind of start to grow a platform.
Yeah, and the thesis behind that, Andy, was we saw a particular segment of the market that was being underserved. Obviously, in terms of absorption, all these tier one cities, FLAP-D markets, are almost at capacity, less than 5% vacancy in most of these markets. But Galaxy always has had an edge in working on energy arrangements. That's how actually the thesis with which we started Galaxy. So we saw an opportunity to enter a market that it was extremely hard to secure more energy, more sites. And what we loved about Redhill was not only is it, right along the M25 corridor, along with other key data centers, had the right latency, but we were able to secure additional energy to the site, which was previously not available. And if you follow, if your listeners follow the UK market, there's a lot of talk about, getting energy in the future and doing large sites, but the reality is that right now, even that there's not a lot of vacant capacity available, and certainly it's extremely hard to secure new energy to any site. And our thesis, low vacancy, Galaxy's unique ability to secure energy and constrained markets. That is how, we decided to pull the plug on it. Not to mention, we also saw that, you know, in the US, in other markets, that's where AI training is happening, because uh, the cost of energy is substantially lower compared to Europe. On the other hand, there's micro edge interference, uh, you know, inference ability in edge markets. But there's a part of the market that people were not paying a lot of attention to, which is the 15 to 20 megawatt AI built, uh, close to edge inference ability, sites with ability to inference, and that is, so culmination of all of these things really allowed us to go for Red Hill, and we're really excited, and we want to programmatically develop, acquire, build more facilities in Europe.
Yeah, and you mentioned AI, and obviously, like you said earlier, we've got to talk about it. We never used to talk about it, but now it's pretty much all we talk about. And obviously, latency is important. The myth is busted ages ago that latency doesn't matter for AI workloads, as you've just said. But legacy data centers is obviously a challenge of that as well. It's how do you make the data center suitable for the workload of tomorrow, whether that's power, the density of the racks or anything. So, how are you going to go about that process within Redhill and other data centers that you bring into the platform?
Yeah, so Red Hill is actually kind of in one of those unique vintages of data centers where it has actually very strong capabilities to be very flexible. Um, you've got technologies like a chilled water loop, which you think every data center's got to have a chilled water loop, but it's beyond just having a chilled water loop. It's having a chiller infrastructure that allows you to come in, um, put in things like CDUs that can allow direct to chip cooling, that can allow some of the cold aisle containment infrastructure that you want for AI specifically. They've got new types of cooling racks and things that you can deliver within the data halls themselves. And Red Hill is actually, you've got the space, you've got the power, you just need to put it together to make it happen. So it's minor configuration changes to floor space, and you can be active with an AI build in a couple of weeks. I mean, it's marvelous how adaptable some of these sites actually are when you really peel off the onion and look into it. And so I think we're going to see a lot more of those types of facilities. And in general, one of our theses is really to go in, find facilities like Red Hill that have that capability where you can come in to a legacy facility and come in over the top and adapt it to an AI workload. And you're going to see a lot more of that because a lot of these facilities are in those constrained areas, those latency focused areas where you need at least the edge inference locations, and you're going to come in, you're going to put in retrofits and configuration modifications to bring in the AI infrastructure into those sites.
And to add to that, right? Like in all of Europe right now, there are like 15 to 20 facilities that are purely designed for AI, and we're going to need to use existing infrastructure and adapt it. What's interesting, we are one of the few sites which actually already have the NVIDIA, H100 implemented with some of our customers. We also have, very interesting tenants. But to speak to your question, how do you accommodate AI in existing infrastructure, and bring DLC? We've seen a variety of ways that you can go about doing that. You can get racks from HP, Dell, which are essentially just cabinets that you put inside your existing data halls. You're supplying the energy, and within those racks, you can go up to 100 to 150 kW per rack. So that's one way of accommodating AI within existing data centers. But Andy, it's also quite interesting to kind of draw you to the gaps that we see. There are financial enterprises that don't want to, go beyond the 6 to 8 kW, per rack type of densities. As hyperscalers are also trying to go through a refresh, figuring out where their technology is going to be, and that's why they're deciding, do they want to do DLC, do they want to do immersion, what combination. So they're also going through a refresh themselves. But we think the sweet spot is to kind of have really high density rows uh, with chilled water loops, where you can do direct liquid chip cooling. There's a variety of options to accommodate, and I think since Europe doesn't have a lot more power capacity coming online, we would have to repurpose some of this existing infrastructure. We are doing that, and to go beyond that, we've got 15 MVA new build that's coming purely for AI. So the idea is that data center environments should be able to accommodate different types of use cases. There's obviously the strong enterprise side, which is within the 8 to 10 kW. That is the hyperscale side, but now with AI, you have to be able to accommodate them, give them the densities that they want, but you also have to be able to cater to other customers because it's an ecosystem where they're all working with each other.
Yeah, I think in this industry, it's easy to get lost in the scale, isn't it? Like bigger is better. Or you see 500 megawatt data centers announced, you see 120, 150 kilowatt racks, and you think that is a solution for somebody. But like you just said, it's not the solution for everybody. And I think sometimes in the industry, we get a bit lost in we're only going to need 2 racks in a hall because that's that's the scale. But like you say, that's not what everybody wants or needs. So there's a lot of change coming. And I think the legacy data centers and, like you say, the refit and the retrofit is a forgotten industry sometimes because we are immersed in this news of, and it's partly my fault for sharing a lot of the news, but it's 500 megawatt data center announced, 200 megawatt, 4.5 gigawatt announcement by Stargate or whatever it might be. We do get lost in the scale sometimes and forget about like you say, the everyday customer. That there's a lot of them out there as well.
Even from a valuation perspective, we've seen places like Dallas Infomart and, old legacy buildings, One Wilshire, in LA. Some of the most valuable data center assets out there are older buildings with excellent connectivity that you refurbish to whatever is the latest, greatest use cases that your customers are demanding. So totally with you, Andy, on that.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's an excellent point, Dave. I mean, you've got a situation where many of these sites that are these latency heavy sites, these network hotels, they're some of the most valuable pieces of infrastructure on the planet, and we need more of those, not fewer.
Yeah, definitely. And another point I wanted to talk to you about, and because of your backgrounds as well, is power. And the challenge you'll be experiencing, yourselves in the industry. Power is a big problem. We all know that, and it's something that we need solutions for. How do you see the industry adapting to the power demand, and as density goes up and everything? What does the industry need to do in order to kind of move with the power requirements? Because I think that's where it's struggling at the moment, keeping up to the demand.
I think it needs to go and work very closely with generation. I think you're going to see in industry a lot more assets and a lot more facilities that have a lot stronger partnership with generation assets, generation owners. And so I think as we go and navigate the industry, you're talking about Microsoft Energy working with all of these different things to actually build natural gas facilities, solar facilities, even nuclear facilities. Some of the mini 150 megawatt nuclear, small nuclear, modular nuclear facilities they're working on. And I think that's not a blip. I think that's a trend, and I think it's only going to get deeper and broader as utilities and data centers have to figure out ways to work much closer together. And I think that that's really where the industry goes. You're going to see all of these types of solutions that add on a couple megawatts, that bring in additional power onto site, that allow some of these site owners to do additional generation. You're going to see changes in the way that industry has been looking at backup generation, and so you're going to see more natural gas reciprocating engines on site with a lot of these data centers. So I think that's where you're really going to see a merger where data centers start to look a lot more like power plants, and power plants start to look a lot more like data centers. So it's a convergence that's coming, but I think we're still a few years away from that. But it's definitely something that I'm starting to see. Some of our customers, some of our clients really talk about, and we've even been approached by a utility on, well, how do we actually work well with you guys? How do we figure out how we can even deploy data center infrastructure, digital infrastructure, so that we can have Microsoft or Google as an end user?
Actually, I'm gonna take it a step beyond that, and speaking of technological shifts, uh, in my opinion, Andy, and Galaxy's opinion, certainly, the future is, like Ash was alluding, doing facilities with generation and data center going in together. We are seeing some of that, integration in the US and other markets, the players like Crusoe and others who are trying to combine that. And actually, that actually makes us really bullish. As I mentioned, one of Galaxy's core advantages was always on the energy side. And what we hope to replicate in Europe going forward is a similar kind of model where you do your own energy generation, and then you have your own data center offtake, which would allow you to be really efficient because there's no line losses. It's something behind the meter to sustainable. And I think that is, like Ash was alluding, that is what the hyperscalers are looking for. That is what the AI customers are looking for, and figuring out how to integrate both of this is where the future is. And you're going to be seeing a lot more of that, hopefully starting with Galaxy.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? This time, like the crossover between power and data centers, like you say, consumer to producer. It's a fascinating time. Like where this goes again, like you can kind of predict it, but it's going to be a transition over the next few years.
Absolutely, I think.
Sorry, go on, Ash.
Yeah, I think one of the things that is a little bit underestimated is the effect that data center loads have on grids, and especially with AI. When an AI workload starts, it causes a lot of strain on many grids, and so a lot of times it's incumbent on AI builders and AI owners to actually build microgrids, because then they can adapt their load profile to their generation much more succinctly. Because when you're bringing on a inference engine train, that you're going to go from 0 to 100 megawatts in an hour. There's no grid that can handle that type of fluctuation very easily, and you're going to have to then, when that model completes, you're going to have to drop all that load, and again, it's just a massive strain on grid. And so people, I think, have underestimated the work that utilities have had to do to kind of react to that type of load profile. But I think it's incumbent, especially on owners like Crusoe, and like different developers that are working towards building those AI focused hyperscale facilities. It's incumbent on them to design microgrids and design resiliency in their transmission networks to actually be reactive to that type of chunky load response.
And to add to that, rather than upsetting or taking energy from other projects, such types of development would actually help the grid in being stable, in being able to serve their communities.
Yeah, and I'm aware of a few microgrid projects that are happening. So yeah, again, it's another trend, certainly moving to the fore. The final point I wanted to touch on with you both is around the capital side of it. You're from that world, you understand it, much better than I do. But we've obviously seen significant capital flow into the industry, and the question I get asked all the time is kind of, when will it end, and whether we can answer that one or not. But you're obviously out there looking for equity partners or debt partners and the capital side of it. What's your sort of general view on capital right now? Are we in the middle of it? Are we towards the end of it? Or, what's the view from the market?
I think where a lot of that ends up is there's just a lot of reaction from industry. There's a lot of reaction from sovereign nations as this is a strategic, it's a strategic initiative for a lot of both capital owners as well as sovereign nations. And so I think from their perspective, everyone really does recognize that data centers and AI infrastructure are core infrastructure components of their nation's ability to compete. And in many ways, it is very existential for a lot of these organizations to grow their ability to invest and own data center assets, digital infrastructure assets. And I don't think that changes anytime soon. I think where it ends up is first you have right now. I don't think we're in the phase yet where we're quite in a bubble. I think we're far away from even meeting the needs of where infrastructure demand is going. And so in terms of if I think we're going to go through a phase of lower growth, we might. Obviously, that is very interest rate dependent because how much capital is available to the markets, is anyone's guess. But in terms of the demand, I think you're really just at the beginnings of where we need to be with demand from just sites in general, but also beyond that from power infrastructure. We just don't have enough energy generation. I think I read somewhere, China's adding on generation in the gigawatts, terawatts, and everywhere else, Europe, North America, we're adding on, just hundreds of megawatts at a time. And it's just a qualitative difference when you're looking at that and seeing, well, what are they seeing that we're not seeing? And the answer is it's that capital formation in the US for the US's ownership, for EMEA and EMEA's ownership is just a lot slower in many ways. And it's a lot more, diversified, but I think it's lacking, frankly.
Yeah, and I have a few points to add there. So Andy, there is as you've seen, there's unprecedented amount of capital that is going into the sector, and this sector has kind of evolved, right? Back when we were starting and we were trying to find investors for Bitcoin mine, people were very skeptical. Hey, is this where is this going, etc. But lately, initially it was like VCs investing in data centers. Then, we got private equity. Then we started getting real estate investors. Now it's transitioning from that to infrastructure funds, to investors, that insurance companies, sovereign wealth funds. So everybody wants to participate in this because there is obviously, earlier we actually had lack of capital that wanted to go into this industry, and it's completely turned around now. You cannot, like Ash was mentioning, in order to stay relevant in this AI global arms race, if you're not investing in your critical infrastructure, you're not investing capital into developing these data centers, you're falling behind. And there is a lot of interest. But it is also true that as GPs, we have a fiduciary responsibility to generate returns for our investors. We've also seen some of the existing large investors wanting to, cycle their capital and take some of it back and hopefully grow it in other areas. So I don't think the fact that the demand is 6 times the available infrastructure is a good proof point to where we're going and how much capital it's going to attract. But it's also true, you're not going to see the kind of returns that you did, 5, 10 years ago, where, you develop an asset and, you immediately exit with a lease. I think that part, it's going to be more realistic. Earlier, when you were in spec and investing, in a hyperscale site, your expectation was to get a 20, 30% IRR because of the risk profile. And the world has changed, right? Like these hyperscale facilities, especially when you've got a lease commitment from a big hyperscaler, it's turned into a negotiation. The risk is much more contained because these customers are going to be there and they need your infrastructure. But at the same time, the returns and the yields have also come down. A hyperscaler project trades for around 8 to 10% stable yields. Whereas there is a lot more opportunity on the AI side, on the colocation side, the enterprise side. And what's really interesting is we are kind of seeing a vertical integration where you bring the power, the data center infrastructure, you bring the equipment, what you're seeing with the neoclouds, you bring the GPUs, you combine it all together to create a value proposition. But from a debt and equity perspective, there is enough capital available to go after some of these assets. What's more important is finding the right partners who are in for the right reasons, have the right expectations, and you're aligned on stability, sustainability, and operational expertise. And one last thing I'd like to add is that we hear all sorts of things in the news cycles, but it's very important to sometimes zoom out and just ask yourself a question: if not us, are your kids not going to be using AI to enhance their lives? There's all this talk about AI is going to take jobs and do that. Just like the internet, there was a lot of projections that the internet is going to be nothing and Bitcoin is going to be nothing, and we consistently see those arguments being beaten down. And most likely, we are going to see a lot more AI, and it's going to add to our productivity. It's going to add to our GDP, and it's going to be an enhancer, not a disruption.
Yeah, completely agree. I have that conversation. My children use AI all the time. They're 8 and 10, so gives you an idea of. I always say, look at what your children are doing. That's where the world's going. We were talking about it yesterday at work.
That's very good advice, right? Rather than worrying about AI bots, Terminator style, giving us problems, we should educate ourselves in it. We should get ahead of the curve, start using it, because from my vantage point, I don't see any of these workloads going away. I certainly don't see hyperscale going away. I don't see enterprises not needing their own colocation infrastructure. And I certainly don't see us shutting down ChatGPT and Perplexity. And, I think it's going to keep evolving, and we're partners.
Definitely. And final question before I let you get on. We've talked a lot about the future already, but what's your general outlook? Whether that's for Galaxy Data Centres, you want to give a quick, what's next for you guys, or just the industry as a whole, and just give a bit of a view of what's coming.
Yeah, I think we're working on a lot of interesting things. Redhill has been a tremendous new segment for us, and I think we're gonna continue to work to grow that type of segment across other assets, kind of in the markets that we work in, North America, EMEA, and Southeast Asia. I think that's where we see growth for ourselves. And I think overall, as we work to on our thesis of looking at generation and data infrastructure, I think it's one thing that we're going to seek to combine opportunities where we can do those things together, and see how we can drive kind of excess return for our investors and our LPs.
Yeah. So, obviously see the industry continuing to grow, uh, continuing to be one of the largest consumers of electricity in the world. Uh, with Galaxy, what we're really excited about is that integration of the energy, the infrastructure, and the compute together. And we, being part of different platforms, we've seen this for 10, 12 years, and we see a very positive trajectory for Galaxy, where we also become one of the larger platforms competing in these three markets. But overall, as an industry, I think it's kind of that analogy. People think today that, for example, that they're too late for Bitcoin, for example, right? But you're not too late. It's the early majority that's here right now, and this thing is going to continue to grow. I'm not saying that there's not going to be a day somewhere where we have enough computing capacity. That will come one day. One day we're going to overbuild. But that day is at least 10, 20 years from now. And hopefully by then, we're a very large data center platform serving our enterprise and hyperscale customers' needs, and really at the forefront of AI, and also enabling GPU infrastructure for client work.
Yeah, and I look forward to following you on that journey and sharing it again. We'll do regular podcast every 12 months, and we can talk about what's changed in
Sounds
Galaxy,
great.
but also what's changed in the industry. If a lot happens in 12 weeks, so who knows what will happen in 12 months. Thanks both for your time. I'll put the website in the show notes, but if anyone wants to reach out to you directly, what's the best way to get hold of you?
So we have a PR firm, PR marketing firm, JSA. I think it's a good idea to contact them, but obviously we have our contact information on the Galaxy Data Centers website, and we are always eager to hear potential customers, partners. We're very open-minded. I think one thing that this industry has taught me to be is very open-minded about things and very bullish about the future. So always looking to hear. And FII, Redhill is one of the only few sites in London that has contiguous amounts of capacity available. So if you're a customer, reach out to us, and we'd love to find a bespoke solution for you.
That's it. Capacity available. You don't hear that very often, do you? So yeah, definitely get in touch. Thanks both for your time. As I say, I'll put the website in the show notes. If anyone wants to reach out to you both and can't find you, obviously get in touch with me, and I'll put you in contact. But good to speak to you both. Enjoy the rest of your day. And as I said, I look forward to watching the rest of your journey.
Absolutely.
Cheers,
Andy,
all.
thank you for having us.